They taught a brain to watch itself fail in real time. Fleming and Lau did not study genius. They studied the anterior cingulate cortex lighting up like a smoke detector the millisecond before a wrong answer. That is algorithmic metacognition. Your prefrontal cortex runs a second layer of inference on the first, and when that loop collapses under platform switching and chronic fragmentation, tiredness is the least of it. You lose the error signal itself. The method that repairs it feels almost too physical. Train vagal tone and sleep architecture like physiological scaffolding, and metacognition rewrites itself as an autonomic reflex. Your nervous system already knows how to debug itself. You just interrupted the feed. Your brain is never quiet. It runs a perpetual guessing machine, and the parietal prefrontal loop is where the guess gets compared to the sensory truth. Karl Friston formalized this as the free energy principle. The brain minimizes surprise through hierarchical Bayesian inference. When prediction error stacks up because the feed is interrupted, that mismatch does not stay abstract. Those errors bleed into autonomic chaos. Thayer and Lane mapped the neurovisceral pathway. Heart rate variability collapses. What feels like laziness is accumulated prediction error that the metacognitive layer has not cleared. Botvinnik and Cohen traced this to that same region decades ago. Here is the exit. Hippocampal plasticity tracks training load exactly. Synapses reorganize under demand. Hennig proved this in 2010. Metacognition is metaplasticity written into wetware. You can feel the rewrite happening. HRV climbs. The guess gets sharper. The loop closes. Closing the loop during waking hours is only half the process. The consolidation phase follows stranger rules than anyone assumed. Poldrack mapped how that same hippocampal plasticity enters a competitive lottery during sleep. Slow oscillations and sleep spindles do not just replay memories. They auction off which prediction errors get promoted into long-term priors and which get erased. Miss that window, and the metacognitive layer wakes up carrying phantom errors. Your anterior cingulate fires on ghosts. But here is what nobody measured. If the vagal tone we built in daylight determines spindle density, then the autonomic scaffold controls the auction itself. That changes the entire timeline. And it raises a question I cannot answer yet. What happens to the self-model when the auction gets rigged? Phantom errors from the rigged auction do not fade at dawn. They colonize the interoceptive layer. The insula reads body state and feeds it upward as confidence data. Chronic fragmentation does not drain mental fuel. It floods the insula with prediction errors mislabeled as threat. The ACC locks into vigilance. Anxiety hardens into the default prior. We treated the symptom as the source. The autonomic cascade is the readout of a corrupted confidence computation that corrects the direction. It leaves the curriculum untouched. If metacognition is a trainable autonomic skill, the rigging is adaptation to mistimed inputs. The tissue is innocent. The interval is the operator, and its signature lives in the gap between heartbeats. Treat that interval as passive, and you miss the entire mechanism. Thayer and Lane mapped the neurovisceral highway. The traffic controller was invisible until now. HRV sets the sampling rate for the anterior cingulate. A slower, more variable rhythm forces the metacognitive layer to weight prediction errors differently. The errors remain. Their timing shifts. The insula receives a different interoceptive story. Confidence recalibrates. Deliberately editing that interval rewrites the weighting that tells the brain which errors matter. Relaxation is a side effect. The main event is a shift in clock speed. The question is what happens when that speed changes before the auction even begins. The same training load can expand the synapse or lock it shut. The 2010 paper tracks synaptic expansion under calm autonomic conditions. Nobody tested what happens when that same demand hits a flattened interval. The tissue does not fatigue. It enters a defensive posture. Pataplasticity flips from expansion to conservation. Identical cognitive demand now hardens the prior instead of rewriting it. That is the pivot. The interval edits errors after they form. It also decides whether effort registers as signal or as static. This is not the variable. The vagal state during the session is. Every training protocol ever designed assumed a nervous system already calm. If it was not, the practice engraved the very pattern it promised to solve. The auction wakes up with inventory forged under duress. What does a self-model become when its updates were written by a lock vagus? A self-model forged under duress does not dissolve when the stressor leaves. It becomes the default prior. Every new prediction gets filtered through a locked vagus, so curiosity reads as threat and error become static. The lock releases at a specific respiratory frequency. Lerver and Javerts mapped it precisely. 6 breaths per minute restores baroreflex gain and prefrontal oxygenation. The calm is incidental. The rhythm rewrites the metacognitive layer. 10 minutes before you touch a screen and 10 minutes before sleep, that interval rewrites the auction we saw earlier. The ACC stops firing on ghosts. The spindle lottery promotes real signal. Your nervous system was never broken. It was waiting for the right clock speed. The full research archive, papers, figures, and citations are at jmthomasofficial.com. Everything we traced converges on one input. 10 minutes at 6 breaths per minute before your first screen and 10 minutes before sleep. Do this for 5 days. The anterior cingulate shifts from threat detection to expected uncertainty. The spindle lottery weights novelty over ghosts. Your error signal returns as curiosity. That is how you know the loop has sealed. What you build after that is a different question entirely. The full research archive, papers, figures, and citations are at jmthomasofficial.com.